The New York Times made $36 million in revenue via their podcast last year. This is based on their financial results that have just been published. And I think as a result, we're seeing huge growth in audio advertising, but it's not audio advertising the way that you traditionally imagine.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the music platform category. I'm super excited to be here with James. James is the CEO of Radio Co. James, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
No problem. How's it going, Kyle?
Good. Surviving. To give context to the interview for the audience, why we're chatting today is because we looked at well over 170 companies in the music platform category. It's a little bit hard to push you in just the music platform category. You overlap a lot in the audio category as well. But as we jump into things, maybe the audience will have a little bit more context. But the things that you're doing at Radio Co is really impressive. You've built out a fantastic platform that has awesome modules that enables, I think, creators, but also those within the industry to manage their broadcast, their radio show, their content in a way that I think is really impressive and a lot of flexibility. And so I want to dive into the product level and the things that you've been working on to start, maybe just so that the audience is a good baseline of who is Radio Co. You shared with us a great video. We'll jump to that real quick and then we'll jump into questions. Sounds good?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
95% of the world's population listen to the radio each and every day. With more and more people coming online, there's never been a better time to start your radio station. Radio.co gives you industry standard station management all in your browser. It's a complete radio broadcasting system for stations of any size, giving you the power to go live and connect with your audience at any time. Watch your station thrive with no headaches and no tech guy needed. Upload media, drag and drop playlists, and schedule playlists or live DJs. Edit cue points with industry level precision. Record voice tracks and interviews from your browser. Build branded players that match the look and feel of your station. Create custom widgets and social media integrations to grow your audience. Connect with your listeners wherever they are and however they choose to tune in. Take 5 minutes, supercharge your station, and sign up for Radio.co today.
Thanks, Kyle. And great intro. Radio.co has really been around now for 6 years. So we're coming up to 6 years. It launched in 2015. And before that, I was involved in a similar business called Wave Streaming, basically supplying streaming media services to the radio industry. So prior to 2015, we had lots of clients which are very much just radio stations. So what you'd imagine to be traditional radio stations. But we'd noticed in the years leading up to it, we had more and more inquiries from people who perhaps weren't traditionally involved in the broadcasting space. So things like brands, musicians, DJs who wanted to create radio stations, but didn't want to have to fully understand the kind of intricacies of, how you actually broadcast online and how to turn a stream from a computer onto the internet. How does it actually go from A to B and reach your audience? And it became clear that we had an opportunity to create a sort of a platform which made it really simple for anyone to start a radio station. So that's a complete service. So you can upload your media, you can create playlists, you can schedule those playlists then to go out at specific times of the day. And you can also broadcast live. So you can go live from your computer, wherever that might be, and reach your listeners on pretty much any device. So things like obviously the desktop computer, but more recently, things like smart speakers and mobile, etc. So we probably spent about a year and a half creating the platform between 2014 and 15, launched August 2015, and the rest is history. We spent the first kind of couple of years really innovating and building lots of features and creating a really solid platform. And up to sort of now where we're about 5,000 stations that we're powering. We get tens of millions of listeners coming through our platform every single day. So it's a pretty exciting place to be.
It's interesting that it's a category that seems like I don't want to say overlooked, but it seems like a lot of individuals jump directly into podcasting tools or the podcasting content itself without recognizing that there's a massive industry that exists, which was radio broadcasting for the longest time. But just to give context a little bit more to the audience, just so they have a better understanding, one of the biggest things that's interesting about what you talk about from not only your platform, but you mentioned on your website, is your ability to access, manage, and broadcast anywhere. What does that mean, and how does it really differ from traditional radio stations, specifically in that process of creating broadcasting content?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think traditionally, a lot of people think I'm going to start a radio station. There's a huge investment involved in that process. So I need a physical radio studio for one, which obviously involves premises. Normally it will involve a big fancy mixing desk, lots of equipment, racks of boxes that no one really understands how it all works. And what we wanted to do was demystify that process and make it all cloud-based. So really, you don't need a physical studio to run a radio station. And the idea of just being able to broadcast from your laptop or your desktop opens up a huge amount of possibilities for broadcasters. And interestingly, what we've seen with COVID is a lot of what you'd consider to be like mainstream radio stations have obviously had to go remote, which is like the first time they've ever done it, because they're so used to relying on having this infrastructure in-house, relying heavily on this hardware and obviously the technology that goes with it. And suddenly they're in a position where they've got to get their presenters or their hosts to broadcast remotely. And interestingly, our platform has lent itself to doing exactly that for many years. And not only that, obviously it's really applicable at the moment with everything we've been through over the last year, but just things like covering live events. The idea that all you really need is a mobile connection, like a 3G, a 4G or 5G connection rather. You can get studio quality audio from A to B, which you wouldn't have been able to do 10, 15 years ago, opens up more opportunities and possibilities for broadcasters that, as I say, weren't there. Or traditionally, you might have a big broadcast van with a satellite on top. That's completely unnecessary nowadays. If you're creating radio, you can really broadcast from anywhere, just using your phone or a laptop. And we've always tried to encourage that. We have clients who broadcast everything from sporting events through to like live gigs or DJ sets directly from a bar or directly from a club or from a stadium or wherever it might be.
I just wanted to maybe have you expand on this. You provide a lot of ways in which you can enable users to distribute their broadcast. Can you highlight a few of the different methodologies? It's links, it's embeddable players. We're talking different forms of integrations. Maybe you want to expand on this?
Yeah, so once a client has a station up and running, they can then integrate that with their website. So that could be as simple as a link, which will launch a Windows Media Player or iTunes, or it can be, mostly these days, people will have embedded players on the website, HTML5 players. Again, we have an API which allows people to embed that so it completely matches their website experience. And also, of course, our services are fully compatible with mobile apps. So there's lots of different apps such as TuneIn, radio.com, etc., where they'll be able to reach listeners on those platforms. But also as well, more modern devices, smart speakers, Google Home, Alexa, etc. These are all things that people are using now to listen to the radio more often than when people used to have like an FM radio or a DAB radio in their kitchen. Now they have a smart speaker. So of course, it makes it really easy to reach a wider audience using these kind of devices too.
And you even go as far as helping users set up their own custom website or audio player, or even their own app. You're really engaged with and really actually go pretty far in helping out your customer base.
Yeah, the idea is really we try and provide like a white label solution. So if you look at radio.co, it's like the kind of the Swiss Army knife that sits behind the radio station. So it facilitates users to create a broadcast and manage it, but it's not a destination for listeners as such. It's a platform for the radio station owner to create and manage their actual station. But as a result, we do provide brandable apps so they can have their own radio station app, which is branded to them in iOS and obviously Android app stores.
Well, in kind of expanding on that, I mean, you guys offer a handful of modules that are pretty interesting. You have the whole gamut, and not only ways in which team members can collaborate or manage different stations, but you provide news bulletins, you help them schedule events, you have a fantastic interface that allows you to cut through different audio and segment things. I mean, you give a lot of flexibility to running a radio show 24/7. I'm just curious, what features really resonate with your customers the most?
I think different stations and different customers have requirements for different features. So there are some stations which are literally just music 24 hours a day. So they just want an easy way to be able to control the flow of that music. So that might just be, say, playing chill out music when it gets past 8 p.m. in the evening, or it might be having a hard rock hour every Friday morning, or whatever it might be. So the tool set's designed to give people flexibility control in terms of music. But then other stations will have, say, music, which is automated overnight, but then they might have live DJs going on at different times of the day. They might have the other DJs that they don't want it to go live, but they want to pre-record their segments. So they might literally record what's known as a voice track, which is just when the host speaks between one song and another. And again, we can do that all online these days. You can do that completely from the browser. So radio.co makes it really simple to manage that process. And likewise, a news bulletin, we have a feature where, for example, there's various news bulletin services. So they'll have, say, an MP3 file that's updated once an hour with the latest news. We can automatically pull that in and have that broadcast at the top of hour every single hour to make the audience up to date with the latest news. And so really all these tools are available for broadcasters to use without, they're available to really, so some customers will say, we just want this feature, and other customers will take advantage of more of the key features. It just depends on what they're trying to create, really.
I highly encourage the audience to check out your website, because you list out a lot of the features that you have and the functionality that your platform has, and it's awesome. It's really incredible, and it's practical. It's straightforward. It's easy to use. It's simple interface. Like it's a no-brainer, and this is also why Radio Co is one of the companies that really stood out to us. I also want to highlight one of the things that is interesting is that you guys have a radio university.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, I'd love to. As a startup founder, I've found and always been a big believer in helping customers from the outset, or helping people from the outset before they turn into customers is such an imperative strategy to launching like a SaaS platform. So Radio University is exactly this. It's part of our content marketing strategy. It's basically teaching people everything they need to know about setting up a radio station, or the ins and outs of everything. So we have courses, for example, on being a really good radio presenter. We have courses on monetization, audience growth, etc. And also just lots of free content around those matters as well, around those topics as well. You know, that for us as a business has been so powerful in terms of raising awareness of our brand and our product and our service in the industry, and also people who are looking to get into the industry. So people who perhaps thinking, oh, I'd like to look at radio as a career. And then they come across some of our content. They think, oh, wow, okay, maybe I could actually start my own station. I don't necessarily need to go and be on someone else's. There might be a business opportunity for me here. And I just think the content marketing aspect of any SaaS business is so important, because people buy into not just what you're offering, but they buy into kind of like your ethos as a company, I think, and what you're truly passionate in. And this is our way of sharing our knowledge with the world and just really allowing people to see that there's this opportunity here and there is all these possibilities, and it ties really nicely with the actual product that we provide.
It's one of the things that you notice, especially in what you refer to especially in the SaaS industry, that companies that really truly enable and help their customers, not only providing with a great product, but also help them, not only give them the tools to really learn how the product platform works, but then also gives them the tools necessary to be successful in using the platform and in their industry. And with that tool, it's awesome. I don't think it's a feature that's maybe highlighted enough, and it's not necessarily related to the product, but I think it's really important, especially with engaging with your community and your customers and supporting them long-term. And I think it's incredible that you offer that.
Another thing we've done is touching on that is we've actually worked with a couple of universities. So we've provided accounts for their students who are going through like television and radio courses. And of course, one of the benefits of doing that is you're effectively training people up who are then going to go out into industry to be completely aware of your product. So again, the education thing, I think, is so important, because not only are you trying to inspire people, but actually you're making people aware of what products are out there. So when they go off into industry, they think, okay, let's go and check out radio.co. They might have that sort of dilemma. They might be working for a production company in 5 years' time and think, I'm faced with the challenge of building a radio platform for a brand. What are we going to use to do this? And immediately it's about cementing the idea that your platform's there and available to them.
I wanted to just kind of probe and get your thoughts on a few things, just because being in the position that you are and seeing how your customers interact with your platform. One of the things that we notice, especially in just as the media category overall, regardless of the type of medium that you're using, whether it's audio, content, written material, music, there's this blend of where should the creators' content, where to host creator content, where should it be distributed. And it's great that your platform enables individuals to drive traffic to their own individual website, but at the same time they can distribute their content on other platforms that you mentioned, TuneIn. I mean, where do you think is, from your position, the best means for a lot of your customers to reach their audience? Is it to really rely on external platforms? Is it some customers have that ability to have their own interface and drive individuals to their own website, and that's where I'm just curious,
Yeah.
what is your general thoughts on this?
I think it varies greatly from customer to customer. So some customers will literally be trying to create their own brand. They want a destination for people to come to. We work with, so for example, some record labels or some famous nightclub brands in Ibiza. And they are using the radio as like an extension to what they've already got. So they're already synonymous with music, and they're already synonymous with, say, like Ibiza, for example. So the idea for them is to have the radio station as an extension to what they're doing. So someone comes and experiences their nightclub or their bar whilst they're on their vacation, and they want to then take that away with them, take the slice of that home with them. Radio enables them to give that experience to their audience. So for those kind of brands, it's about creating that experience as part of their existing brand activation, if you like. I think for other people, it's about social media, like you say. It's about saying we have lots of stations that operate, say, in real specific genres. So we might have, I don't know, say 60s and 70s music radio stations. Those guys, people love a bit of nostalgia. And I think social media is always a great platform to share that nostalgia. You know, like, look, these were the top 10 songs this year in 1971 or whatever it might be. So social media can be a fantastic way of engaging and finding those audiences and using that to drive traffic to your brand. And then we have other clients who are using the platform to do more internal things. So for example, one of the things we've seen a big rise on during lockdown is bigger corporates who want to use podcasting and want to use radio to communicate with their workers who are obviously all working remotely. So for example, we had a chain of restaurants, burger restaurants here in the UK, and they wanted to create something to keep in touch, if you like, with their employees who were obviously on the furlough scheme. So they're not working, or they're working remotely, etc. And they thought, okay, let's start a radio station. We can make it about the staff. We can include a bit of music. We can include some interviews and give them free reign over what they want it to contain. And I think that was really an interesting way of engaging with people on an internal basis. And that worked so well, in fact, that they then started thinking, okay, maybe we should launch this as an extension to our actual brand and turn it into a public thing. Absolutely amazing. So I think there's different ways you can use audio. It doesn't have to necessarily be a radio station that the public can listen to. It could be stuff that, you use as a internal communications tool, which is much better than a newsletter, for example, which no one reads anymore. We're working with quite a few sort of bigger organizations to create podcasts and radio stations and things like that for internal communication purposes as well.
I'm curious, how do you think monetization is changing for especially the radio broadcasting content or category as overall?
I think that there's different ways to monetize. The obvious one, which has been around for ages, obviously is running these sort of 30-second spot ads, which you might run every half an hour or 20 minutes, which is traditionally associated with radio. I think times are changing. I think listeners are now responding differently to audio advertising. There's some interesting statistics. The New York Times made $36 million in revenue via their podcast last year. This is based on their financial results that have just been published. And I think as a result, we're seeing huge growth in audio advertising, but it's not audio advertising the way that you traditionally imagine. So there's something called a live read, which is when the host will literally read about the product or service. It's done in much more of an integrated way. Advertisers are turning to audio more and more, for sure. Obviously, we allow our clients to use whatever advertising they want. We have clients who don't want to run advertising because they're running it as a branded thing. So we allow that to be completely up to them. And obviously, we don't take any kind of commission on revenue that they generate. But generally speaking, I think audio advertising is still a new thing, really. It's only kind of started taking off seriously in the last couple of years. But the way it's growing, I think there's got to be more and more opportunity for brands to tie in product services to radio and podcasting. And also people are very responsive to audio advertising. Like, I think radio advertising has been known to always be very effective. Some of the statistics coming out around podcasting more recently, I think it's something like 76% of people respond to audio messages. It's a huge amount of people, and it presents a lot of opportunity for both advertisers, but also for publishers as well.
I wanted to take an even further step back and maybe ask general questions about what you think about the industry. The first one is, overall, when I look at media and content, it's constantly evolving in a lot of different ways. There's many mediums to launch products, whether it's or launch podcasts, music, etc., any type of content. How do you think the radio industry or broadcasting industry is evolving? with this?
It's an interesting question, because one of the things that people have always used to say was, well, video is going to kill the radio star. And it didn't. The radio is stuck by. I think 10 years ago, when Spotify first started launching, people were like, oh, people aren't going to listen to radio anymore. They're going to just listen to computer generated playlists or just subscribe to Spotify. But there's still opportunity. There's still people listening to the radio. And I think also, you've got to treat it more like a content platform these days. So I think radio stations can't just rely on what they're broadcasting. It really needs to be a kind of an involved process where you're looking at, okay, we've got our live radio stream, but what podcasts have we got? What are we putting out on our social media channels? Are we doing video? The broadcasters got to look into all of these different channels and treat it more like a media publishing brand versus just thinking, I'm going to run a radio station and that's going to be it. Because of course your audience is adopting or consuming media rather, and adopting these different channels. They're not just going to be listening to the radio now. You'd be very foolish to think, I've got a radio station, I don't need everything else that goes along with it. Nowadays, you've got to have a complete strategy which kind of is multi-channel. It's just really running a software business. You can't just have a website anymore. You've got to have a video marketing strategy. Now you've got to have an audio strategy. So I think it's the same with the radio industry. I do think it has changed a lot, but obviously and another thing that I've seen happening a lot, certainly here in the UK with radio stations, is they're adopting like a lot more granular music strategy. So rather than just having one radio station playing contemporary hits, they will now have one playing dance music. They'll have one playing rock. They'll have it. So they're giving consumers more choice in terms of the forms of audio that they want to listen to.
And in that, you're the ultimate platform for any broadcaster to use, to have that ability to be flexible, to also distribute on any platform.
Yep.
And do some incredible things.
And our product makes it really easy to spin up multiple channels, broadcasting different forms of content. So if you want to have 5 different channels with spanning different genres, you can create that in a day, really.
What do you think about that? Is that you think about what traditionally we would have to do to set up 5 channels? It's like mind blowing. Last couple questions here. I'm just curious, how has the pandemic affected your industry or your company?
So this is one of those things. This time last year, end of February, middle of February, I was like, okay, what's going on here? We hadn't gone into lockdown. I think we went into lockdown. We left the office to all work remotely. Again, we've always been based in an office, and there was so much uncertainty. As a business, we actually saw a huge increase in signups last year. We had our best year ever in terms of revenue and in terms of new customers as well. More interestingly as well, we saw probably about 3 times the amount of traffic coming through our CDN. So people actually listening to the radio than we previously had. And I think the reason of this was just because it's people are turning to the radio to listen to people, basically, right? So they don't want to sit there and listen to, most people sat in the office before lockdown, before the pandemic, we're quite happily listening to their Spotify playlist or computer generated algorithms. Lockdown, a lot of people at home working alone, they want that human connection. They like the idea that there's someone on the other end of the line. So I think that the pandemic's had a positive impact on the radio industry as a whole. I think more people are tuning into the radio. We've seen more customers signing up. That's my perspective on it.
It makes sense, especially now that a lot of people want to maybe have the time or are interested in tuning into content that's not just continuous music. But last question that I had for you is, where do you think the future of broadcasting is going, and what do you see that most people don't?
I think it's here to stay. That's the first thing. I think there's some people who probably think radio's old hat. It's maybe like waning. I think what's going to be interesting really is to see how apps like Clubhouse, which obviously everyone's talking about at the moment, impact radio, or if they have any impact whatsoever. And likewise, are they going to impact podcasting, or are they going to take people away from using social networks? Because ultimately they're growing really quickly. So I think that's like one of the questions I have. I don't really know the answer to that. I do think that radio is here to stay. I think people are still launching radio stations. People are doing more and more interesting things and linking radio into their existing brands because it's so easy to do these days. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something just reserved for the radio industry. A radio is a tool that any brand can use now to either complement what they're doing in terms of their audience, or in terms of actually doing something internal for their employees, etc. I don't think much is going to happen in terms of the radio industry. I think it's going to just have to make sure that it keeps up with trends and make sure that it continues to adapt and evolve and based on what's happening online. And of course, podcasting is going to certainly take away some of the share from people tuning in on the traditional dial, I suppose.
Well, James, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
No problem.
Before I make closing remarks, is there any asks or things you'd like to announce or share with the audience at all?
Just if anyone's got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me on jamesm.com/connect. There's all of my social links and things on there. And also, whilst I'm here, we've just launched a new product called matchmaker.fm, which is to connect podcasters and guests, which has grown really nicely. So I might as well give that a mention whilst I'm at it as well.
James, again, thank you so much for taking the time. For the audience context why we had this interview, and we looked at well over 170 companies in the music platform category. And one of the companies that stood out to us was radio.co, and the things that they're doing in the broadcasting industry is impressive. And it's not something that we've seen like anyone else. And it's not only the tools that they provide to broadcasters, how simple that it is for broadcasters to set up stations, manage those stations, distribute content in a variety of different outlets, but even have the ability to set up their own custom app or own custom website is incredible. And audio is not going anywhere. And I think it's even amplifying because it's, especially in this context, having a way in which you can have closer communications, live communications, I think is incredible. And Radio Co is going to be the platform that enables that for a lot of creators and broadcasters. So again, James, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thanks for the opportunity, Kyle.